Hey there, I hope you are safe in your little isolation bubble. I feel comfortable here at my desk with all of my books, which is probably a big part of what I like to do, besides, of course, working as a brand strategist. But I wanted to share something with you, and it's that marketing people are weird because I'm a designer from origin. I mean, I started around 10 years ago doing graphic design. And then I gradually evolved into this thing called branding, where I started creating logos. I started making visual identities and stuff. And finally, I gradually evolved into like brand strategy in this space because I started thinking about brand story, about the personality and stuff. So it wasn't just about the visual identity anymore. And then you come into this cliche world where everybody says like, yeah, your brand is not your logo, it's everything. So I started reading more and more about what branding means, about differentiation, and I fell into this beautiful world where I thought that brands were everything. And then all of a sudden, somebody, like, I don't know who, probably my aunt who works in advertising, she tells me like, have you read this book, How Brands Grow? I know it's not the red one, it's the blue one, but doesn't matter. So I read this book, How Brands Grow, and it's like something really weird happens to me. I'm like, what is this? What are these marketing scientists telling me? What kind of weirdness is this? They're saying that differentiation, meaningful differentiation, doesn't matter. That's weird. I start reading more books, such as Weimer Snyder's book, who also did a talk here on Isolated Talks. Go check it out. It's gonna be a lot more interesting than mine. But it's like, what's wrong with these marketing people? They're talking about data and effectiveness and all this stuff, and I always thought it was about brand purpose, about brand different. Like, what is wrong? I really can't know. And then finally, I started getting interested in advertising. Read books such as Alchemy by Rory, who's also on here, and like Dave Trott and all these really interesting people that talk about like brands almost as IDs. And that's again like then they steer me away from this data-driven approach, from this more effectiveness talk to something again that's maybe a little bit closer to my comfort zone, like be different when everybody zigs and zags. But so again, like these people, the advertising people, are part of the marketing people, but they talk in a different way, and it's probably like a lot of different people in this space. And I'm actually like doing brand strategy to create brands. I mean, to define them, to write out their story, but also to understand what the category is about and maybe to help them be positioned better. But like, what does it all matter if you read Byron Sharp's books or other books? Like, it's a really hard space to be in. And so this, like, after, let's say, probably 2 years of dealing with these different sources, I kind of have a few takeaways I wanted to share with you. So maybe you can relate to that, or maybe you can't, because of course, if you're a marketer, you are weird and you probably won't relate to this. So I think the first thing to understand here is that there are different layers of like importance. For example, positioning is this thing where on the one hand, of course, we've seen in the data that it's not that important in terms of like how a brand grow, and for a consumer, maybe it's less important. But actually, from like a practical standpoint, I've done a lot of positioning exercises for companies, and it's really helpful for them. So defining their purpose, defining their positioning, defining what makes them different or special is something really helpful for internal alignment. It's something really helpful that helps like marketing teams and people like have consistent communications. Maybe not so much on purpose, because I gotta admit, sometimes that becomes really shitty. But it is true that these things, like, it's not because, for example, meaningful differentiation doesn't like help for brand growth, it doesn't mean it doesn't help like internal organization. So I think that's something I had to deal with personally. Like, I had to deal with Mark Ritson fighting with Byron Sharp, because that's also something like you come into this new world of marketing and you're like, okay, so here's the place where all the smart people are talking data and it makes sense. And then you see like, whoa, this guy is fighting with this guy because he says differentiation does matter. So again, what's wrong with you marketing people? Like, can't you come to a consensus? For me, as a branding person, that's really confusing. So stop that. It's not true, by the way. I think it's perfectly fine that there are different opinions. But another thing, so here is like, you have to deal with ambiguity. Oh my God, that's a hard word. Why did I write that down? Ambiguity. So again, like Mark Ritson can be right. Byron Sharp can be right. They can be right on different levels, or sometimes one is just has more context than the other. So I think we have to understand that there is probably no absolute truth when it comes to branding, to marketing, to all this stuff. And again, that's why Alchemy is such an interesting book, because not everything has to make sense in a way that it's like scientifically correct. So again, these things can be opposing but still work on a practical level. And so I think that's, again, something that's super important, is being pragmatic. That's something I've learned as like being a brand strategist, is you can consume all of this information, and please do, because it makes you more nuanced and realize that there actually isn't one truth. But always remember that you're helping an organization forward. And so don't get stuck on like brand onions or pyramids or whatever all the time, or one framework or the other. But just make sure like that you understand, like, okay, I'm helping this brand do something, reach a new audience or reach more people or whatever the challenge is, and be pragmatic about it. Like, what is the best way to move forward? And of course, if you can use some of this stuff you've learned, please do. I mean, I tend to look at my brand strategy and like think, like, does it work in Byron Sharp's world? Yes. Okay, that's good. But then maybe does it work in I don't know, Dave Trott's world? Like, what would he say if he saw this strategy? Like, if it says like, oh, we need to target everyone in the category because that's how you grow. Maybe that's not enough to inspire a creative team. So again, like, think about the different layers and what is the goal of what you're writing down. And don't just take one theory or one science and work your whole way around that. And then one final thing that really has helped me in like dealing with this crazy world is defining your thinking. So what I'm exactly doing here is like, it's just putting another pole in the ground where you say like, okay, I've come this far. I understand that differentiation, for example, isn't the holy grail of branding. But what is it then? And what is the role of that? And like trying to define that, write that down, create a podcast or a video or a talk, whatever, that really helps you. And it's not that it's about like saying that other definitions are bad. It's just really good to have like your own definition. Like, I can really recommend you sitting down, taking a leaf of paper and just writing down like, what does brand mean to me? What is my definition of brand? What is your definition of brand strategy? What is marketing for you? What is advertising for you? What is strategy for you? And just use these like definitions or try to define them as you would like on a Wikipedia page or something. And you'll see that it forces you to think about these different things you've learned, and it forces you to create some kind of consensus or compromise, or like you're making sense of the world on your own terms. And I think that is something really important. Voila. So I hope you didn't get offended by me by me saying that marketing people are weird. Actually, I think as a branding person, was one of the best things that could ever happen to me, is like learning more about marketing and seeing how branding and marketing work together to create better brands. So that's it. Thanks. Be safe. And of course, donate to Isolated Talks, because it's a really nice initiative and I'm honored to be here. Bye-bye.